Subscribing to The Observer on YouTube couldn't be easier, and we're going to show you exactly how to do that. First, navigate to www.youtube.com/TheObserverNJ. Once you get there, all you need to do is hit the subscribe button. Next to the subscribe button, click the down arrow and then all. And that's it. You're subscribed, and now anytime The Observer is live, you will be notified. Hi again, everybody. It's Kevin Canessa coming to you live from the newsroom of The Observer and TheObserver.com on this, the 5th day of November in the year 2025. Sure hope you're enjoying your Wednesdays, no matter where it is you are in the country. Here in the Northeast, it's a nice and mild day today. What is it? 62 degrees right now in downtown Kearney. So hope you're enjoying this day. And as we have done over the last couple of years, whenever an election is over, we will join you and do a little bit of a recap of what just transpired about 24 hours ago in the town of Kearney and in North Arlington. But of course, we are going to start in the town of Kearney today, and we'll start right up at the top with the mayor's race. If you see the screen, everything's on the screen right now, too, in case you're on audio, so I just wanted everybody to know that. Now, here is something very, here are the actual results. 5,674 votes for Mayor Carol Jean Doyle, and her constant challenger, Sidney Ferreira, has had 3,029 votes. Now, I got to be honest with you, and in fairness, I thought this election was going to be a lot closer than it was. I really did. And part of the reason is that the Republican Party spent an inordinate amount of money on this election. And you can tell that they did simply because the mailers that you would get in the mail, and there were so many of them, would often say they were paid for by some sort of political action committee down in Washington, D.C., or the state Republican Party, and things of that nature. So if I were an estimator, I would say they probably spent about $100,000 on this election. And that's a lot of money for a local municipal election. And I would have given you the actual numbers, but the Republican Party has not submitted their forms yet. They have not submitted any of their forms yet on how much was spent during this election. So I can't give you a definitive answer. But if you look at what was going on, when you talk about those vans going up and down Kearney Avenue, and blocking the street in front of Town Hall and causing a nuisance and all this other stuff. And then you factor all of that in with the mailers and the billboard on Chestnut Street and Midland Avenue. They spent a good load of cash. But we can't tell you for sure yet because they didn't submit their forms to the state of New Jersey just yet. The Democratic Party, on the other hand, spent, it looks to me, in the area of about $12,000. So if my predictions are right, it will be about a 10-to-1 spending margin. Now, what's very intriguing about these numbers here and the percentages and the amount of money that was likely spent on this election. In 2023, when Sid Ferreira ran for mayor in a three-way race against Mayor Carol Jean Doyle and also former Councilman Peter Santana, he got 32% of the vote in 2023. In this election, where there were only two candidates, that number was up 2%. He got 34% of the vote. Just think about that. Just think about that for a second. It only jumped from 32% of the vote to 34% of the vote. I know it's a different kind of amount of voting number and voting tally in the long run, but when you think about that and all the money that was probably spent, that's not very good at all. It's not very good at all. So in the greater scheme of things, all that money that was spent was for naught. And let's be realistic, folks. No matter who you were hoping would win the election in Kearney, And there was certainly a great interest in this election from the very beginning. This was one of the single most negative campaigns I have ever seen, and I've lived here since 1985. I don't know about what happened in the 70s and 60s. I'm sure there were a lot that were crazy even back then. There were some in the mid to late 90s that were wacky, and that includes the election of 1995, when Mayor Doyle first ran for mayor against Leo Vartan, and Vartan won that election. That was a very negative election. But nothing on earth can compare to the negativity that we saw over the last 6 months. And it started early. It started in the summer. And you know what's interesting is, I think a lot of times, and I think that's why I predicted this particular election so wrong and thought it would be significantly closer. It's because a small number of people were loud as hell. And the truth of the matter is, being loud does not equate into a coalition. It doesn't translate into a movement. All it means is these people are very loud. They're very opinionated. They have their thoughts. They have their views. And that's great. That's a great part of what our democracy is all about. But it was a fooling thing in many regards, because so few of them translated into votes. So many of them did not translate into votes, that loudness. And when you look back at what the last 2 years have been like in the town of Kearney, with right after Mayor Al Santos decided he was going to become a judge, today would have been a very significant day in the life of former Councilman Peter Santana, who, it's my understanding, has been attacking Carol Jean Doyle on social media. I can't say I've seen it because I do not read it. It's the vitriol has been too much, so I have completely devoided myself from reading social media. But my understanding is that he was attacking her in the last couple of weeks leading up to the election, which is absolutely golden, because today's the day he should be becoming mayor, Peter Santana. All he had to do was wait, and he would probably be the mayor today, because I would say he would have had a similar number of votes as Mayor Doyle did if it had been a race between Peter and Sidney Ferreira. But he didn't want to wait. And he was hurt because his picture wasn't in the right spot at Town Hall. That was what was significant. So you can see how it all devolved from, no, I'm not going to wait, to attacking the mayor on things that were probably not true or accurate, to this. And I think that's a shame in a way. Pete's a young guy, and he could have been the mayor today, but he's not, because Mayor Doyle ran a campaign that did not use these stupid videos and these stupid memes and little TikToks of Renato da Silva trying to sound extra smart as usual. But when you think about people like that, Peter, Renato, I guess you could say even somebody like Laura Savelli Pettigrew, Billy Campbell, who were these people were out there yelling and screaming, yet everything they touch of late loses. And so it makes me wonder, like, what are we doing here? How much more of these getting out and screaming and yelling and lying do you need to do before somebody finally wakes up and realizes, no, we're not fighting a winning battle here, and we're not going to fight a winning battle if we keep yelling and screaming at each other and getting personal and getting nasty and down in the gutter. I mean, even Megan Doyle was attacked. Megan Doyle, an accomplished lawyer in Monmouth County, was attacked in this race. You never bring your family into an election, ever. They did. I just don't get it. And that utter vitriol, where it initiated from, what has caused it, nobody seems to know. But it's there. But again, like in 2023, in 2024, and 2025, the results have been pretty overwhelming here. This was a 2-1 victory for all of the candidates who won, whether it's for the mayor, first, second, third, and fourth ward. What does that tell you? And I'll tell you what, there are 4 people who probably woke up this morning very, very concerned about what their futures are going to be like. That's Eileen Eckel, Stat Theodoropoulos, Dennis Solano, and George Zapata. They have to know that this isn't going to continue like this. So fall in line and stop with the infighting, or you're going to get primaried. It's that simple. It really is. And, you know, it blows my mind sometimes that nobody has really thought of that over the last couple of months. Or maybe they haven't, they just don't give a crap. But that is the reality that we are facing right now, is that there could be another set of primaries coming up in June of 2026. And if they think they're going to just sit there for the next year and continue to be disagreeable just to be disagreeable, it's not going to work. It is not going to work. And so I think it will be very, very interesting to see whether Eileen decides to run again, or if maybe she and Tom, who need to learn how to use a mute button better, will just rise and go into the sunset and move to Pennsylvania or down the shore, wherever they have their home. You know, what I mean by learning to use a mute button is, take a look at the last council meeting when Eileen Eckel was at a remote location and they didn't have the mute button on, and her husband gets up and says, "Oh, it looks like he's grown a set of balls finally," to one of their colleagues, Theodoropoulos. That's really nice, Tom. Very, very nice that you would say that about your colleague and somebody who's supposed to be on your side. But then again, you are not a very intelligent man anyway, so Stat is going to have a rough go of it. I think George May and Dennis Solano in over his head. So blatantly, obviously, speaking from a script when he doesn't go to the meetings and he's speaking at using Zoom. I don't know who's writing the script. Maybe it's Al Santos. Maybe it's Susan McCurry. I don't know. But it's so blatantly obvious that most of the time they're just reading from a script when they're not on a camera. So when all is said and done, there has been so much negativity. But despite all of that, this is what your result is. This is what your result is. You can yell and scream as much as you want. Well, 12 of them. It doesn't work here. It doesn't work here. And until people realize that, it's just going to be the same cycle over and over. I hope to God this is the last time this guy runs. The writing should be on the wall. This is his 5th election in 4 years. 5th, here, listen to that. 5th election in 4 years. I'm going to tell you a story real quick. In 1998, I ran for town council, and I ran against Al Santos, who was the mayor of became the mayor of Kearney 2 years later. In 1999, I ran for the school board in Kearney, and I lost. In fact, I came in 5th out of 5 places in 1999. For me, that was enough. Like, okay, these people don't want me in there. I was 22 years old, 23 years old. They don't want me. I'm not going to run. I'm not going to keep running and losing just to say I ran. And so at some point in 1999, I said to myself, no, it's not in the cards right now. Backed off, and I'm glad I never got back into it all. But now we're talking about somebody who has run. He ran in 2021 in a primary election as a Democrat. In 2022 as an unaffiliated voter for 4th Ward councilman. In 2023 for mayor as a Republican and for the General Assembly as a Republican. Twice. 2 times on the ballot. And if he had won, he could only take one of the 2. You'd have to make the decision. Because in the state of New Jersey, other than a few people who were grandfathered in, like Brian Stack, you do not have you cannot hold 2 offices in the state of New Jersey. And now here we are, 2025, Republican mayor. And that begs another question. I think, generally speaking, when somebody doesn't know what political party they belong to, that's a turnoff for other people. Are you really a Republican? You were a Democrat the first 40 years of your life, and now you're a Republican because they're throwing in thousands upon thousands of dollars to get behind you. So what are you? What do you stand for? What do you believe in? What are your ideas? We still, 4 years after, still have not heard a single policy idea of what he would have done if he became the mayor of Kearney or a council member. And that's why I say it one last time. Please, God, let this be the end of all this nonsense. It becomes overkill when it's the same people over and over and over running for the same office. So it will be interesting to see what happens next year with the 4 races that are open in Kearney. I would think that the 4 who are sitting as incumbents will more than likely be primary. And I don't know. I really, when they first got elected, George Zapata and Statya Dropoulos, I thought were going to be great. I really did. And they've done some good things. I'm not going to deny that over the last 4 years. 3 years, rather. But if they think that they can spend 2 years of yelling and screaming and being disagreeable to be disagreeable for the most part, and then just skate through to re-election, no, it's not going to work that way. It doesn't work that way. So I can't wait to see what happens. I truly can't. And you know what else too? There was something else that I didn't think about with this election, which was just so obscene. During the early voting portion, which was last week, and there were 2 weekends involved there, there was a lot of bitching and complaining by Mr. Ferreira and his team. Number one, because they were inappropriately hanging out at polling locations less than 100 feet from the polling location, which the law is. The truth of the matter, they should have been kept 100 feet away from the absentee ballot box, which is on Kearney Avenue, but they did the measurements from the inside where the machines were. And they were complaining and complaining and complaining to the point where they had removed from working the polls Denise Facito, who is Jerry's wife, and Ava Laudansky, who is the niece of Councilwoman Mary Trina DeCastro. The job of a person who works the polls is to check people in and get them in and out as quickly as possible so they can get their duty done, their due diligence, vote, and go home. But some people decided on their own that it was too much of a conflict. And while I can understand that there are times where you might think that the niece of a candidate or the wife or spouse of a candidate might possibly be in a position where they could be biased for whatever reason, that just simply wasn't the case here. And people went on social media and attacked Denise Fusito. And they attacked Ava Laudansky. If you know Denise, you know she was a teacher for many, many years in Sacred Heart School, Kearney Christian Academy, Schuyler School, retired now, has donated so much to the community financially, tricky trade gifts. I could go on and on and on. And to make up an accusation that Denise and or Ava would have done something inappropriate at a ballot box was to me the epitome of a disgrace and one of the lowest things that I had seen in this entire election. I'm going to tell you something. Denise Fusito taught Sidney Ferreira when he was a student. And he sent a letter to the county complaining about the potential impropriety there. All right, listen, we'll get over the whole whatever it is, but don't you dare ever attack somebody's credibility like that. That's not fair. That was completely unfair. And then, of course, some of the minions like Darius fall right in line. I will never understand how that happened and why nobody ever faces consequences for making things up like that and saying things that are not true. But this is what happened. That's how bad this last election was. It should have never happened. It should have never, ever happened, but it did. And those are things you don't forget. Those are things you don't forget. This guy, I don't know what happened to him, but something, everything he says is just a conspiracy theory, or the world's out to get them, and everybody's breaking the law, and everybody's doing it the wrong way. No. I can tell you from personal experience that what Denise Fusito does is not anything but for the right reasons. And if you look at the body of work, even that Ava has done too, that's coming out too. She's a young woman, and yet she's already done more than any of these people have who lost last night. So I wanted to address that. I'm rambling now, but there's the mayor's race. Let's move on to the other races in Kearney. Mary Trine DeCastro, who has been a member of the council for 8 years, beat Smiley Walla, 1,137 votes to 468 votes. Smiley is a business owner in the town of Kearney, and this was the largest margin of victory for any of the 5 races that we saw last night there. Joe Rodriguez won fairly easily, too, in the second ward, 1,099 votes to Margarita Fernandez's 498 votes. Margarita Fernandez was taking credit for things that she did not do in this election, and it backfired. Fred Esteves, 1,880 votes to George Santos's 1,077 votes. Fred is retired. George Santos operates a series of laundromats in the town of Kearney, and this was probably the closest race, but it was still not even close in reality. And now we get to the last one in Kearney, and that is Jerry Fusito, who you see on the screen here, with 1,489 votes to Anthony Morales' 882 votes. I'd like to tell you something about Anthony Morales. I don't know a damn thing about him. I don't think anybody does, to be honest. He moved here a couple of years ago from North Hudson County, and somehow was able to garner 882 votes in this past election. But maybe we'll see more of him in the future, and maybe we can find out a little bit about who he is and what he stands for. Now, I want to move over to North Arlington briefly. And you see the two names on the screen right here, Kirk Del Russo and Amanda DiCicco. Kirk had 2,962 votes, and Amanda had 2,871 votes. Kirk's a longtime incumbent, and Amanda was appointed to the council this year, and now will get her first 4-year term. The Republicans did an amazing job once again in North Arlington under the guidance of Dan Pronti, who is really the man behind all the things that go on in the town of in the borough of North Arlington. I will say that I don't know much about the two Democrats who ran. I had no way to get in touch with them until they sent me an email like a couple of days ago. And I do think the numbers were a little bit closer than I had expected. I think the two Democrats had like 2,200 or 2,300 votes. But what's going on in North Arlington is just exemplary. You know, what Mayor Pronti's doing and the members of the borough council there are doing is great. They're building the right way. They're opening businesses the right way, and they're building senior housing. And it's no surprise that they both won at all. They ran a spectacular campaign, and I hope to get to speak with Kirk and Amanda at some point in the coming days, and the same thing for the council candidates in Kearney as well. But the Republicans have a stronghold in North Arlington, yet the voter registrations don't match that, which is very interesting. But the Democratic Party in North Arlington is practically non-existent anymore. It is, since Steve Tonelli went off to be a member of the county commissioners. It really is kind of fallen apart there. And I don't know if they really have a strong enough organization anymore to win an election. Then again, when you're running up against any candidate that Dan Pronti puts out there, you're already behind the 8 ball, just from the start. So, congratulations to Kirk and to Amanda on a fine showing in North Arlington. They will continue now for the next 3 years in their term as members of the Borough Council in the Borough of North Arlington. And believe it or not, that's about it for today. We went through a lot. We went through a lot today. There's a lot to digest. But it's finally over, this election, I think most people would agree. Whether it's with the commercials from the state, from New York City, the inundation of mailers here in Kearney, etc. It's a good thing that the election is finally over. But to recap it one more time on the way out, Carol Jean Doyle was reelected to her first 4-year term as mayor of Kearney. All of her candidates won re-election in council races. That's Mary Trine DeCastro, Joe Rodriguez, Fred Esteves, and Jerry Facito. And in North Arlington, the Republicans with a clean sweep, Kirk Del Russo and Amanda DiCicco. So, finally, one last word about the election of 2025, and that last word is, thank God it is over. It is 2 o'clock here on the East Coast, 11 o'clock on the West Coast if you're out west. Kevin Knessa here with you on the Observer Live. I want to thank each and every one of you for joining me today. I do apologize that I did not get to take a look at the chat room. I'm sure there's a lot of comments, and if I will certainly read them later and respond to them. I want to thank all of you for being here today. I will be back with you on Tuesday of next week with the Observer Live again, unless, of course, something happens in the time between now and then. So from the newsroom of The Observer and TheObserver.com, Kevin Knessa signing off for now. And we hope to see you back here again very, very soon. Enjoy the rest of your day, everybody. Take care.